Hello, horror listeners. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button for the channel. Also, make sure to tell us in the comments how you like the story and from where you are watching or listening. If you want to hear any specific story, feel free to request it. Now let's begin the story. I never thought much about how ordinary jobs could turn into something you remember for the rest of your life. Something that changes the way you look at people, at buildings, at every single place you once thought was safe. I figured food delivery was harmless. You drive, you drop off, you wave, you leave. No customers breathing down your neck, no managers yelling about clock-ins, no coworkers gossiping behind your back. Just you, the road, and the quiet hum of your car. My name's Caleb Mercer, and I grew up in Ridgefield, Pennsylvania, a small steel town turned suburb about an hour from Pittsburgh. Ridgefield's the kind of place where every other block has either a gas station, a church, or a Dollar Tree. Winters come fast and stay longer than anyone wants them to, and the summers are sticky enough that the asphalt practically sweats. I was 26 that fall, living in a one-bedroom unit above a pawn shop on Lincoln Avenue. Rent was cheap because the building's boiler hadn't worked right in years, and the hallways smelled faintly of cigarette smoke, no matter how many air fresheners I plugged in. But it was home. My mom used to tell me it was good for me to live small while I was still figuring things out. What she really meant was she hoped I'd save money, maybe finish school, maybe stop drifting job to job. Before Deliveries, I worked 3 years at a car parts warehouse. Heavy lifting, early mornings, the kind of work that makes your shoulders ache and your palms calloused. Then in February, layoffs came. Corporate said automation and downsizing. But to me, it felt like I'd just been erased. One day you're punching a clock, the next day you're just another name on a termination letter. I tried unemployment, I tried job boards, but Ridgefield isn't the kind of place with opportunity spilling over. Rent was due, bills piled up, my old Corolla needed gas and repairs. That's when I downloaded DashCart, the food delivery app. At first it felt like a lifeline. Cash quick, hours flexible. I didn't mind the odd shifts either. Nights suited me. I've always been more comfortable when the world's gone quiet. Streets empty, store lights dimmed. My mom used to joke that I had the soul of a night guard, born to keep watch while everyone else slept. That night in late September, the air had that faint crispness that tells you fall is close. I'd been out since 6, mostly running orders from diners and pizza shops. By midnight, things slowed down. I parked in my usual spot by the old train depot. It was a brick skeleton of a building, boarded up years ago, but the lot had good cell service, and I could sit without cops hassling me. I had music low, one arm draped on the steering wheel, when the phone buzzed. New order. McDonald's, Riverbend Plaza. Pick up now. Drop off about 20 minutes away. I hit accept. Easy. The pickup went smooth. The overnight crew barely looked up anymore when I came in. A kid with acne and a manager with tired eyes shoved me a brown bag and a soda cup. No words, no smiles, just business. The receipt didn't have a name, just an address. 102 Brookdale Drive. I didn't think twice. GPS led me west, out past the residential streets, then onto Old Quarry Road, a stretch of half-lit pavement lined with warehouses and shuttered machine shops. My headlights carved tunnels in the dark, the music filling in the silence. "Turn right onto Brookdale Drive," the voice chirped. I slowed, turning onto a narrow road I'd never taken before. Brookdale looked like the kind of street people forgot about. Faded lines on cracked asphalt, weeds breaking through the curbs. On either side, squat brick buildings loomed, their paint peeling, their signs missing letters. The kind of industrial park where businesses come to die. I muttered to myself, "What the hell kind of address is this?" The GPS dinged. Arrived! The destination was a low, windowless building with a flat roof and a lot that could fit 20 cars but held none. No signage. Just a single gray metal door under a flickering lamp. My phone buzzed. Message from customer. "I see you. Bring it to the gray door on the left." I looked up. Sure enough, there it was. Plain, gray, anonymous. I grabbed the bag, opened my door. The night was dead quiet. Even my footsteps on the gravel sounded too loud. As I got close, another message popped. "Just bring it inside for me. Thanks." I froze. The app discouraged going in. Most customers just grabbed their food at the door, but I'd had a few who wanted it dropped on a desk or counter. Security guards, night shift workers. I told myself that's all this was. I tried the handle. It gave with a metallic groan. Inside was a narrow hallway, the walls lined with chipped paint, lit by spaced-out bulbs that glowed a sickly yellow. The air was stale, heavy with dust and something metallic, like old pipes. "Hello?" I called softly. My voice echoed back. No answer. I stepped in. The door shut behind me with a heavy clunk. When I turned back, the handle wouldn't move. Locked. Hey! I banged on it. "Door's stuck!" Silence. That's when I heard it. Click. The sound of another door opening deeper in the hall, then shutting. My chest tightened. I set the bag down, its paper rustling in the silence. "Hello? I've got your food." No response, then came the footsteps. Slow at first, then quicker. Purposeful, heading in my direction. I backed up, pulse hammering. My brain screamed at me to run, but the locked door behind me left only one option: deeper inside. I darted down the hallway, shoving through a doorway into a dark office. The smell of dust and mildew filled my nose. I crouched behind a desk, heart pounding so loud it felt like whoever was out there could hear it. The footsteps stopped outside the office. Silence. Then, creak. Like weight shifting on the floor, I clamped my hand over my mouth. After what felt like forever, the steps moved again. Retreating down the hall, I counted to 30 before I dared move. Slipping out, I followed the hallway's bend until I spotted Salvation double doors with a flickering red exit sign. I shoved them open. Cold night air hit me like a wave. I bolted across the lot, fumbling for my car keys. My hands shook so bad I dropped them once twice, before finally jamming them into the lock inside. Engine on. Doors locked. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. Another message. "Customer. You shouldn't have left." I didn't look again. I peeled out of that lot, tires squealing, breath ragged. I didn't slow until I hit the main road. I called 911, words tumbling out. The dispatcher stayed calm, said an officer would meet me. 20 minutes later, a cruiser rolled up. Officer was mid-40s, tired eyes, the kind of man who'd seen too many false alarms. He checked the address, came back shaking his head. "That building's been vacant 6 years," he said. "No power except emergency lights. Nobody leases it." "But someone was in there," I insisted. My voice cracked. He didn't argue, just wrote down my statement, gave me a case number. "Stay cautious with these apps," he said. "Not everyone out there's looking for food." I drove home with my knuckles white on the wheel. Every shadow on the road felt like it moved. Every car behind me felt like it followed too long. When I got back to Lincoln Avenue, I parked, sat in the dark for a long time before I could make myself climb the stairs. That night I barely slept. Every creak of the old building made me flinch. Every vibration from my phone made my stomach clench. I never did find out who texted me or who was walking that hallway. But sometimes when I close my eyes, I still hear those footsteps, just on the other side of the door. Story 2. I was 27 when I started doing deliveries for Maple Square Pizza, a family-run joint tucked between a laundromat and a vape shop in Claremont, Massachusetts. At that point in my life, I wasn't chasing a dream. I wasn't even chasing stability. I was just chasing distraction. My name's Evan Cole. I'd grown up in Claremont, a small New England town where the winters were harsh, the summers sticky, and people mostly minded their own business. After high school, some of my friends scattered for college, others got stuck in factory jobs, and a few like me just kind of floated. By day, I worked at a sign printing shop off the main drag. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid rent and kept my hands busy. Evenings, though, that's when the loneliness hit the hardest. My fiancée, Lena, had moved to North Carolina for grad school 8 months earlier. We told ourselves long distance would work. We were still technically together, but calls were getting shorter, texts fewer. Nights alone in my apartment felt like being locked inside a padded cell with nothing but my own thoughts. That's why I picked up delivery shifts. Not because I needed the money, though extra cash never hurt, but because driving gave me a reason to leave the apartment. I liked the rhythm of it. Bag up the food, hop in the car, radio low, cruise through quiet streets. There was something almost meditative about it, like the town only really belonged to me once the shops closed and traffic thinned. But I also knew deliveries weren't always harmless. You heard stories, wrong addresses, sketchy customers, houses that didn't exist, guys getting stiffed, threatened, sometimes worse. I'd had my share of weird runs too. A guy who paid entirely in coins, a drunk woman who kept calling me her ex's name, a teenager who tried to pay with a gift card to Chuck E. Cheese, but nothing ever truly dangerous. I thought I had a good sense for spotting trouble before it landed in my lap. I was wrong. It was a Thursday night in early October, the kind where the air is cool but not freezing, and the leaves have just started giving up their grip on the trees. Around 8:45 p.m., I was leaning against the stainless steel prep counter in the back of Maple Square, listening to the dishwasher sing along badly to an old Green Day track. Business had slowed after the dinner rush, and I was half hoping my manager, Rick, would cut me loose early. That's when the ticket printer started spitting out a fresh order. Rick didn't even look up from the register. "Another one for you, Evan." I tore the slip free. 2 large cheese, extra breadsticks, paid cash tip. The name, Andrew Fallon. Address, 119 Willow Road. I frowned. Willow Road. That wasn't a regular route. Not downtown, not near the high school, not even in the new condo developments. "Where the hell's Willow?" I asked. Rick shrugged, wiping his hands on a rag. "Backside of town, past the old quarry. Shouldn't be too bad. Just follow County Route 6 until you see the turnoff. Pretty sure it's the last house before the road dead ends." Something about that made me pause. Last house at the end of a dead-end road? At 9 o'clock at night? Rick smirked. "You scared of the dark now?" I gave him a look. "Scared of weirdos who order double cheese, maybe." The dishwasher, still humming, chimed in. "Isn't Willow the one with that busted street light? Place looks like a horror movie out there." Rick waved him off. "Relax. It's cash tip. Says so right there. You'll be in and out." I glanced at the wall clock. 8:52 p.m. If I left now, I'd be there by 9:10. A little late for a long run, but doable. I bagged up the order, slid it into the insulated red carrier, and headed for the door. The first few minutes were familiar. Gas station lot mostly empty. The thrift shop's neon open sign already switched off. The glow of the diner still spilling through its windows where a handful of regulars probably sat nursing coffee. Once I hit County Route 6, though, the world changed. The pavement narrowed, shoulders disappeared, and the forest leaned in closer with every bend. My headlights carved through the dark in long white blades, catching the flash of deer eyes before they vanished into the undergrowth. 15 minutes later, the GPS spoke up in its calm, synthetic voice. "Turn right onto Willow Road." I slowed, scanning. Sure enough, there it was. A cracked asphalt turnoff, half covered in leaves. No streetlight, just a weathered wooden sign leaning at an angle. Willow RD barely visible under peeling white paint. "Of course," I muttered. I turned, tires crunching over gravel, and eased down the road. Willow wasn't really a road so much as a suggestion of one. Trees pressed in on either side, branches arching overhead like a tunnel. Potholes jarred my suspension. The GPS map showed a single stretch, maybe half a mile, ending in nothing. At the very end, just as Rick had said, a mailbox leaned on a bent post. 119, numbers stenciled in fading black. A narrow dirt driveway split off into the trees. No lights, no movement. I pulled over, engine idling, and double-checked the receipt. Yep, 119 Willow Road, Andrew Fallon. I rolled down the window, listening. Nothing. Not dogs, not crickets, not even wind. Just silence thick enough to press against my ears. I grabbed my phone and called the number on the slip. After 2 rings, a voice picked up. A man's voice, low and rough, like gravel in a throat. "Yeah? Hey, this is Evan from Maple Square. I'm out front with your order, but I don't see a house number. You at 119 Willow?" There was a pause. "You're in the right spot." "Okay, but I'm not seeing a driveway, just trees." "It's there," he said. "Narrow, you can't see it from the car. Gotta get out and walk a little. You'll see it clear once you're on foot." That didn't sit right. Customers usually came to the door, maybe the porch, not halfway down some invisible trail. You sure you can't just step out and wave me down?" I asked. Another pause. "I'll meet you halfway." And then, faintly, deeper in the trees, light. Not a porch light, not a flashlight either. Dimmer, warmer, almost like a lantern glow. It flickered once, then went dark. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Was that you with the light?" "What light?" His tone was flat. The line went dead. I sat there, phone still against my ear, staring at the dark. My gut screamed to leave, but some part of me thought maybe it was just an old guy with a bad cell signal. Maybe his porch light was busted. I stepped out, keeping the driver's side door open. The air was colder here, damp with the smell of moss and wet leaves. My shoes crunched on gravel as I circled around to grab the pizzas. That's when I saw it, a faint trail cutting into the undergrowth, like someone had dragged a sled through the fallen leaves. Narrow, uneven, no tire marks. From somewhere inside, the rustling of leaves. Not wind. Steady, deliberate. My chest tightened. I set the pizza bag down at the edge of the road. My voice came out louder than I meant. "Your order's here." No answer. The rustling grew louder, quicker. Every instinct screamed. I spun, slid into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and threw the car into gear. My headlights caught only leaves and trunks and shadow. As I pulled away, I checked the rearview mirror, and that's when I saw him, a man standing at the edge of the trees, perfectly still, watching me, not waving, not moving, just standing. In his hand, the faint orange glow of a lantern. I didn't tell Rick the details when I got back, just said the guy never showed, and I left the order roadside. Rick grumbled, but didn't press. But on the drive home, every empty stretch of road made me check my mirrors more than once. The next morning, I tried looking up Andrew Fallon, 119 Willow Road. Nothing. No listing, no directory. No Fallon in Claremont at all. That night, as I parked outside my apartment, I caught myself staring at the tree line across the lot. For a second, just a second, I swore I saw that faint orange glow. And sometimes now, when I'm driving a late delivery down some back road, I'll catch it again. Just far enough away that I can't be sure. A lantern swaying slowly in the dark. Story 3, I never thought much about how ordinary decisions, like ordering dinner, could turn into moments that change everything. Back then, I was 27, living alone in a rented duplex on Maple Street in Crestwood, North Carolina. Crestwood wasn't some postcard-perfect southern town. It was a mix of old mill houses, strip malls that never seemed full, and streets where the streetlights buzzed louder than they shined. The kind of place people drove through on the way to somewhere else. I had ended up there after a breakup that had left me more hollow than I wanted to admit. 4 years with someone you thought was the one, only to have them walk away leaves you standing in a living room filled with furniture that feels borrowed. I stayed because I couldn't handle moving back in with my parents in Raleigh. Starting fresh seemed like the braver option, though if I'm honest, it felt lonely most nights. My job wasn't glamorous. I worked as a receptionist at a pediatric clinic, which meant sticky lollipops on the counter and kids who cried when you smiled at them. The hours were steady, the pay decent, but when I closed my car door at 6 p.m. and drove home, there wasn't much waiting for me. Most evenings, I kicked off my flats, slipped into sweatpants, and put on whatever show didn't require too much brainpower. My social life had become my phone, scrolling through Instagram, sending my sister the occasional meme, and pretending I wasn't jealous of all the engagement photos in my feed. That Friday night started the same as so many others, but I was drained in a way that made even boiling pasta feel like too much effort. By 7:30, I decided to order food. Crestwood didn't have many options outside of chains, but there was this family-owned pizza place called Manny's Slice House. They had this crust, crispy, brushed with garlic butter, that always tasted like it had been made just for you. I didn't order from them often, but that night, I wanted comfort. I dialed their number instead of using an app. Maybe it was the old school part of me that liked talking to a human. A cheerful voice answered, took my order for a large pepperoni with mushrooms, and said it would be about 30 minutes. 30 minutes turned into 20. The doorbell rang just as I was halfway through pouring myself a glass of wine. When I opened the door, a man stood there holding a black insulated pizza bag. He wasn't what I expected. He was maybe mid-30s, short but broad-shouldered, with sandy blonde hair that looked like it hadn't been washed in a couple of days. His Manny's Slice House polo was faded, stretched tight at the collar, and the name tag pinned on his chest said, Kyle. "Large pepperoni with mushrooms?" he asked, voice flat, almost mechanical. "That's me," I said, already fishing out the cash I'd set aside. His eyes flicked up from the pizza box to me. Quick, but not casual. It felt like he was taking in more than he should in that brief glance. I forced a polite smile, handed him the money, and waited for the change. He passed me the box, then lingered a second too long. "Smells good in there," he said almost absent-mindedly, as if commenting on more than just the food. Thanks," I replied quickly, eager to close the door. "Have a good night," he said, though it came out flat, rehearsed. "You too." He turned, walked toward a beat-up silver Corolla parked at the curb, and drove off. I shut the door, locked it out of habit, and carried the pizza inside. If you'd asked me right then if I felt afraid, I would have laughed. Nothing about Kyle screamed danger. If anything, he just seemed tired, forgettable. The night carried on. I ate too many slices, texted my sister a bit, and let Netflix autoplay whatever came next. By 11 p.m., I was yawning, ready to brush my teeth and call it a night. That's when the knock came. At first I froze, not because I was scared, but because it didn't make sense. Nobody knocks on my door that late, not in Crestwood. My friends wouldn't just drop by unannounced, and I wasn't expecting a package. The knock came again, louder. Heart beating faster, I crept toward the front window and peeked through the blinds. My stomach sank. It was him, Kyle, the pizza guy, but he wasn't in his work uniform anymore. He was wearing a black hoodie and jeans, standing under the dim porch light, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. I stared, hoping maybe I was imagining it, but then his head tilted up. His eyes met mine directly through the blinds. The shock of being caught sent me stumbling back, heart hammering. He knocked again, harder this time. I stayed frozen, breath shallow, until finally I forced myself to speak, through the locked door. "Can I help you?" I called out, trying to sound firm. Silence. I swallowed hard. "Kyle, right? From Manny's? Did I forget something?" He didn't answer. He just shifted his weight and stepped closer to the window. Instinct screamed at me to shut every curtain, to make myself invisible. Instead, I backed away, shaking my head. "Number whatever this is, it's not happening." He raised his hand slowly, gesturing for me to open the door. That small, deliberate motion made my skin crawl more than shouting ever could. "No," I said firmly, voice trembling. "You need to leave." For a few seconds, he just stood there, unreadable. Then, without a word, he turned and walked off the porch, vanishing into the dark. Relief flooded me. Maybe it was over. Maybe he was drunk, confused, or... My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Unknown number. I didn't answer. But a voicemail notification popped up instantly. Hands shaking, I pressed play. A low male voice filled the room. Calm. Cold. "I'm outside. If you don't let me in, I'm going to break in." It felt like ice water down my spine. I hit redial before I could think. He answered instantly. "What do you want?" I demanded, voice cracking. "Let me in," he said, tone flat. "Why?" "Just do it." Click. He hung up. That broke whatever hesitation I had left. I dialed 911, whispering into the phone as I explained everything. His name, the delivery, the knock, the voicemail. "Stay on the line," the dispatcher instructed. "Lock yourself somewhere safe. Officers are on the way." I grabbed my charger and bolted into the bathroom, locking the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the tub, phone pressed to my ear, every nerve in my body electric with fear. The house creaked. The bathroom fan hummed. Every sound made me flinch. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate. On the porch. My throat closed. The dispatcher's voice in my ear. "Ma'am, stay calm. Officers are 2 minutes out." Something brushed against the bathroom window. A faint scrape. I held my breath. And then, sirens. Red and blue light flickered against the frosted glass. A man's voice outside shouted, "Police!" I unlocked the bathroom door, knees weak, and stumbled out just as officers were moving across my front yard with flashlights. Kyle was gone. I gave them everything. His name from the receipt, his description, the number he called from. They promised they'd track him down. That was months ago. I haven't heard from him since. But I still think about that night every time I order food. The moment when ordinary life cracked open, and I saw how fragile the line really is between safety and danger. Now before I take a single bite, I double-check the locks. Always. Story 4. I never thought I'd find myself back in delivery work after college. The first time I did it, I was 22, fresh out of school with a useless communications degree and waiting for something better to come along. I took a job delivering sandwiches for a sub shop near campus, worked there for about 4 months and swore I'd never do it again. The late nights, the sketchy neighborhoods, the constant low-level fear that some stranger might jump me while I was fumbling with a delivery bag. It was exhausting in a way people who've never done it can't quite understand. But life has a way of dragging you back into things you thought you'd outgrown. By the fall of last year, I was 29, living in a one-bedroom apartment in Bridgeton, Missouri, a mid-sized city about 30 minutes from St. Louis. For the last 3 years, I'd been working as a junior account manager for a mid-tier marketing agency. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid my bills, gave me health insurance, and kept me busy. Then in August, one of our biggest clients backed out after a merger. Within a month, our department lost almost half its business, and just like that, my hours were cut to part-time. At first, I tried to make do. I picked up tutoring gigs online. I helped a buddy who ran a moving business on weekends. I even sold off some old electronics. But rent in Bridgeton wasn't cheap, and after 2 months of scraping by, I was staring at a November bank statement that barely had 3 digits in it. So late October, against everything I'd promised myself, I walked into Cedar Hill Pizza on the west side of town and asked if they were hiring drivers. The owner, Mr. Albright, was a wiry, gray-haired man with the look of someone who'd spent his whole life standing behind a counter. He hired me on the spot. "Just don't wreck the car," he'd said, sliding a company polo shirt across the counter, and that was that. By the first week of December, I'd fallen into the routine. 5 or 6 nights a week, I'd clock in around 5:30 p.m., grab whatever order was ready, and spend the evening running pizzas all over Bridgeton and the surrounding suburbs. It wasn't glamorous, but there were perks. I got to be alone in the car, listening to music. I learned the back roads of the city. And on bad weather nights, people tipped generously just for showing up. The staff at Cedar Hill Pizza was small but solid. There was Maya, the college sophomore who worked the register quick with sarcasm and faster with math. There was Derek, another driver, mid-30s, who always had a story about the worst customer ever. And then there was Mr. Albright, who ran the place with the gruff efficiency of a man who'd seen too many teenagers quit mid-shift. That Friday night, December 15th, started like any other. I came in a little early, grabbed a slice from the warmer, and checked the delivery board. Orders were steady but not overwhelming, the kind of night where you could almost predict when things would slow down. Around 10:30, Derek stretched his back and muttered, "One more and I'm done. My kid's got a soccer game in the morning." I was hoping the same. The December air had that wet, bone-deep chill that made your fingers ache, and I was ready to call it a night. By 10:50, the shop was quiet. Then Maya's voice cut through the silence. "Hey, Evan," she called from behind the register. "You want the last one?" I was halfway through a soda. "Depends. Where's it going?" She squinted at the screen. Hollow Creek Road, out by Lake Darby." My stomach sank a little. Hollow Creek wasn't in town. It was 20 minutes north, up into the wooded stretches where the streetlights thinned out. I'd only been up there twice before, both times in daylight. Maya added, "They prepaid. Tip included. $19, that sealed it." I grabbed the insulated bag, slid the ticket off the printer, and read the name. C. Harper. "Never heard of it," I said. "Cabin or house?" "Cabin, I think. Says Darby Woods Retreat." Mr. Albright grunted from the back. "Don't get lost up there. Roads twist around like a snake. And watch your gas gauge." I nodded, trying to play it casual. But something about long, isolated deliveries always made my chest tighten. By 11:05, I was on County Road 7, the headlights cutting through the mist. The further north I went, the narrower the road became, pine trees pressing in on both sides like a tunnel. My phone signal dropped from 3 bars to 1, then flickered out entirely. The GPS told me to turn onto Hollow Creek Road, a gravel lane marked by a weather-beaten wooden post. I slowed, tires crunching as I rolled forward. Old-fashioned lamp posts lined the road, each holding a dim yellow bulb. They gave off just enough light to mark the curves, but beyond that was only blackness. After about half a mile, the gravel opened into a clearing. A wooden sign arched over the entrance. Darby Woods Retreat. Welcome below it, 5 smaller arrows pointed down narrow footpaths. Cabin 1, Cabin 2, Cabin 3, Cabin 4, Cabin 5. The ticket said Cabin 3. I parked beside a wooden bench, killed the engine, and stepped out into the cold. The air smelled of damp pine and faint wood smoke, though I didn't see any fires burning. My breath came out in fog. The path to Cabin 3 was barely wide enough for one person, lit by small lanterns mounted on waist-high posts. Each bulb glowed weakly, leaving stretches of almost total darkness between them. I adjusted the pizza bag in my hand and started walking. The crunch of gravel under my boots echoed louder than it should have, carrying strangely in the stillness. Halfway down the path, I glanced left and caught sight of another cabin through the trees. Dark windows, no sign of life. Another cabin appeared on the right. Same thing, shadows behind drawn curtains. When I checked my phone again, the screen just read, "No service." Cabin 3 sat in a small clearing, 1 story tall, with a porch and a dusting of frost on the roof. A single path lamp glowed faintly against the front wall. The window was dark. I walked up and knocked. The sound echoed through the quiet like a gunshot. No answer. I knocked again, louder. "Pizza delivery." Silence. I frowned and pulled out my phone to call the number on the order. To my surprise, it rang twice before cutting off. A moment later, a text appeared. "Sorry, not there right now. Door's unlocked. Just leave it on the table inside." "Thanks." I read it twice, my throat tightening. Something about it felt wrong. Most people wouldn't want a stranger stepping inside their cabin. Still, it was late, and the thought of hiking all the way back with a cooling pizza made me hesitate. I tried the knob. It turned easily. The door creaked open. The air inside smelled faintly of mildew and old wood. No lights were on, but the path lamp cast just enough glow to show a wooden table in the center of the room. "Hello?" I called. My voice sounded too loud. No answer. I stepped inside, set the bag down, and unzipped it. That's when I heard it, a sharp creak from the back of the cabin. I froze, heart hammering. My eyes snapped toward a closed door in the far corner. The door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, maybe late 40s, with a beard and a heavy flannel shirt. He moved quickly, deliberately, straight toward me. "Hey," he said, voice low. "Thanks for bringing it in. Got your tip right here." I forced a laugh. "It's fine. You already—" He kept coming, faster now, eyes fixed on me. My chest tightened. I backed toward the door. "I should get going." He lunged. I stumbled back onto the porch, nearly tripping on the step, straight into someone else. A second man, shorter, wearing a dark hoodie. He grunted as I knocked into him, staggering. Panic surged. I bolted down the path, gravel crunching under my boots. Behind me, footsteps thundered. I didn't dare look back until I passed the next lamp. When I glanced over my shoulder, they weren't in the light, just shadows moving in the darkness between posts. I ran harder, lungs burning, until the clearing came into view. My car, my salvation. I dove inside, started the engine, and tore down the gravel lane. I didn't stop until I was back in Bridgeton, parked under a streetlight with full bars on my phone. Hands shaking, I dialed 911 and spilled everything. Deputies went out to Hollow Creek Road an hour later. They found the cabin empty. No sign of the men, no trace of food or footprints. The kicker? The cabin hadn't even been rented. The payment had been made with a prepaid Visa card. The phone number traced back to an unregistered VoIP service. They'd set me up. They knew a delivery driver would come. They knew I'd have to walk in alone. But what I can't stop thinking about, even now, is the second man. He hadn't come from inside. He was waiting, watching. The whole time I walked down that narrow path, he must have been standing just out of sight. And if he'd been a second faster when I stumbled into him, I don't think I'd be here telling you this. Story 5. I never imagined that delivering takeout would leave me with nightmares that still jolt me awake at night. My name's Daniel Price. Most people just call me Danny. I'm 25, a part-time student at Bayfield Community College in western Montana, and I was grinding through my last semester when this happened. Like a lot of people my age, I was broke. Tuition, rent, groceries, it all added up. My mom helped when she could, but she was in Idaho raising my little brother on her own. My dad? Out of the picture for years, so most of the weight was on me. That's why I picked up food delivery. DoorDash, Uber Eats, sometimes Grubhub. It wasn't glamorous, but it was flexible, and it filled the cracks between classes. Most nights it was routine. Drive around, grab some burgers or pad thai, smile politely at strangers, and watch the money drip in. No real drama, but if I've learned anything, it's that the ordinary can flip into something terrifying without warning. And that night on Hollow Creek Road, well, I'll never forget it. It was mid-December. Montana winters are brutal. Long stretches of gray sky, wind that slices through you, and snow that piles higher than the bumpers on most cars. That evening had been strange, though. Cold, yes, but no fresh snow. The roads were clear, just slick with leftover ice. I'd just come back from campus after finishing a group project. My roommate Kyle was out of town visiting family, so I had the apartment to myself. Around 8:30 p.m., I was scrolling aimlessly on my phone when I realized I wasn't tired. I figured, why not squeeze in a couple more deliveries? An extra $40 could mean groceries for the week. I opened the DoorDash app and flipped to available. Almost immediately, a request popped up. Restaurant, Golden Lantern, Chinese kitchen pay, $27, including tip. Address, 411 Hollow Creek Road. I stared at the screen for a second. $27 for one order was unusually high. I'd delivered from Golden Lantern before. It was a little mom-and-pop spot tucked in a strip mall. Good food, always busy. The only weird part was the address. Hollow Creek Road. I didn't recognize it. Curiosity won out. All right, I muttered, hitting accept. Golden Lantern was its usual self. Bright fluorescent lights, red paper lanterns, the smell of soy and sesame oil wafting through the door. Pick up for price, I told the hostess. She disappeared into the kitchen and came back carrying 2 giant paper bags stapled shut. One was heavy, sagging with soup containers. Careful with that one, she said, nodding at the bag in my left hand. Completely full. Drive slow. Her tone wasn't strange, but something in her eyes was, like she was holding back a smirk or maybe a warning. Got it, I said, forcing a polite grin. She hesitated before sliding the bags onto the counter. Long drive tonight. Be careful out there. I chalked it up to small talk, but her words stuck in my head as I carried the food out to my car. The first 15 minutes were uneventful. Main roads, stoplights, other cars. But the GPS eventually pulled me onto a 2-lane road that sloped downward into heavier woods. Streetlights disappeared. The only glow came from my headlights bouncing off icy patches and pine branches, heavy with frost. My phone's voice navigation said, "Continue for 4.2 miles. I gripped the wheel tighter. My heater whined against the cold air, but my fingers were still stiff. Every so often, the GPS would flicker like it was struggling to stay connected. Out here, service was spotty. Finally, I passed a crooked wooden sign. Hollow Creek Road. The road narrowed to 1 lane, gravel crunching under my tires. On either side, trees crowded in thick, their shadows like bars. I slowed to a crawl. After about half a mile, the woods broke and houses appeared, if you could call them that. Old, widely spaced structures, some with Christmas lights glowing faintly, others dark, sagging, forgotten. My GPS said the destination was just ahead. That's when I saw it. A wooden gate, white paint peeling, a rusted number plaque nailed to it, 411. It matched the order slip exactly. I put the car in park, got out, and pushed at the gate. It wasn't locked, just tied with a frayed rope loop. When I nudged it open, the hinges squealed sharp and metallic. The sound made the hair on my arm stand up. Behind the gate stretched a gravel driveway, swallowed quickly by trees. I swallowed hard, muttering to myself, "People just like privacy out here. Nothing weird." I drove through, gravel crunching beneath me, branches scraping the roof. About 300 feet in, the trees opened into a small clearing. There it was, the house. It looked wrong. Not abandoned exactly, but neglected. Single story, weathered gray siding, a sagging porch step, windows black as if painted over. No lights, no sign of life. And the front door, wide open. My gut tightened, but the GPS dot blinked right on top of it. The order slip even had a note, "Leave on porch if no answer." So I grabbed the bags and started toward the porch. The night was deathly silent. No wind, no crickets. Even my footsteps on the gravel seemed to echo unnaturally. I reached the porch, bent slightly to set the bags down. "Hey, just bring it up here, bud." I froze. The voice was male, casual, almost too casual, like he was sitting upstairs, not wanting to move. I turned my head slowly. From where I stood, I could see the staircase just inside the front door, leading into total blackness. Sure," I said, my throat dry. I stepped inside. The floor creaked loud under my weight. My headlights spilled faintly through the doorway, but upstairs was completely dark. "That's it, right up here," the man said again. Same smooth tone. Something about it was wrong. Too smooth. Too rehearsed. I stopped at the base of the stairs, my hands tightening on the bags. My ears strained for movement. Footsteps, shuffling, anything. But there was nothing. Just silence. And then I felt it. A primal surge of instinct deep in my chest. My brain screaming without words. "Get out!" I backed away, forcing a laugh. "You can just come down for it, man." No answer. I set the bags on the porch. My hands shook as I walked quickly, then ran to my car. I slammed the door, locked it, and looked back. The doorway was just a black rectangle now, empty. I drove faster than I should have, tires slipping on icy gravel until I hit the main road. My pulse hammered in my ears the entire way home. For 2 days, I told no one. I even marked the order as delivered, convinced myself it was just some lazy guy upstairs. But curiosity is poison. On the 3rd day, I searched the address online. County property records pulled it up. 411 Hollow Creek Road, vacant, seized by the state for back taxes. No current residents. My stomach turned to ice. I stared at the screen, the words blurring. If no one lived there, then who or what was waiting at the top of those stairs that night? I don't have an answer, and part of me hopes I never will. But every time I drive late at night for a delivery, I think about that voice. Smooth, practiced, coaxing, waiting for someone dumb enough to walk all the way up. Story 6, I never imagined a delivery job would leave me with memories I still can't shake years later. My name's Isaac Miller. I'm 39 now, but this story goes back more than a decade to when I was in my late 20s. At the time, I was living in Crestwood, Indiana, a medium-sized city with neighborhoods that range from upper-middle-class comfort to places you didn't want to drive through after dark. Back then, I didn't have much of a plan for my life. College hadn't worked out. I'd started, dropped out, gone back, dropped out again. I was bouncing between jobs, retail, construction, warehouse shifts, but delivery work always seemed to pull me back. It was the one gig where I felt like I had some control. My car, my music, no boss standing over my shoulder. Sure, you had to move fast and the money wasn't steady, but on a good weekend, I could clear enough in tips to cover rent. When I got hired at Eddie's Pizza, a locally owned chain with about 5 locations around Crestwood, I figured it'd be another 6-month stopgap. Just long enough to pay off some debt, maybe save up for a better car. I never thought it'd be the place where I'd come face to face with someone I'd later see on the news described as a predator hiding in plain sight. His name was Shane Carter. He was about my age, maybe 27, 28. Average height, wiry build, long hair that always hung into his face. He wore band shirts, mostly death metal groups I'd never heard of, jagged logos in unreadable fonts. First time I met him was on a Friday night rush. I just clocked in, the manager handed me a ticket, and Shane brushed past me on his way out the door with 3 boxes stacked in his arms. "You the new guy?" he asked, balancing the pizzas. "Yeah, Isaac." "Cool, I'm Shane. Watch out for Maple Avenue after dark. Cops don't even go down there unless they've got backup." And just like that, he was gone. He was blunt, a little rough around the edges, but he knew the job inside out. Over the next few weeks, we crossed paths during shifts, and he started talking to me more. About music, mostly. He'd burn me CDs, bands from Sweden, Finland, places I couldn't point to on a map. Some of it I actually liked. Heavy, fast, but kind of hypnotic. On slow nights, we'd sit on the curb outside the store, smoking cigarettes, trading stories about our screw-up 20s. He told me he used to play bass in a local band before everything went to hell. I didn't ask what he meant. He didn't volunteer details. At first, I thought he was just another guy trying to figure life out, like me. But little things started to bother me. One night, we went out to a bar after our shift. Shane drank harder than anyone else at the table. At first, he was funny, cracking dark jokes that had everyone laughing. But when a woman at the bar turned him down after he tried to buy her a drink, his mood flipped like a switch. "Bitch thinks she's too good," he muttered, loud enough that I heard. I shot him a look. "Come on, man, let it go." He smirked, but his eyes looked flat, cold. It wasn't just the bar either. At work, sometimes he'd stare at female customers a second too long. Once after a delivery, he came back grinning. "What's up?" I asked. "Nothing," he said, tossing his bag on the counter. Girl opened the door in her pajamas. Guess she wasn't expecting anyone. Nice view. It was the way he said it, like he was replaying it in his head, that made me uneasy. I tried to brush it off. Guys talk crude sometimes. Maybe I was overthinking. But then there were the deliveries that took him forever. Jobs that should have been 20 minutes stretched to 45. An hour. The manager, Tom, got on him more than once. "Cut the crap, Shane. If you're wasting time, it costs us money." Shane would just shrug. Traffic. Or GPS sent me the wrong way. But Crestwood wasn't that big of a city. You didn't get lost that often. I started keeping my distance. If he invited me out after work, I made excuses. Gotta get up early. Meeting someone. I still worked with him, but I didn't want to be his buddy anymore. He noticed. One night, as I grabbed a delivery bag, he leaned against the counter and studied me. "You've been quiet lately," he said. "Just busy," I muttered. "You're a shitty liar," he replied, smiling. But it wasn't a friendly smile. That was the last time I ever hung out with him outside work. It was a Thursday in late October when Shane didn't come back from a delivery. At first, we figured he'd gotten stuck on a long run. An hour passed, then 90 minutes. Tom called his cell. No answer. The next morning, the news hit. Local pizza delivery driver arrested after breaking into apartment. I almost spit out my coffee when I saw Shane's mugshot. Same long hair, same practiced smirk. According to the report, he delivered to a young woman's apartment. Later that night, he tried to break in. She was home. She called 911. When the cops arrived, they caught him with a knife in his jacket pocket. At first, everyone at Eddie's thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe he was drunk. Maybe the cops got it wrong. But then more came out. The police suspected him in multiple assaults across Crestwood over the last 3 years. They thought he'd been using delivery jobs as cover, scoping out apartments, figuring out who lived alone, then coming back. They tied him to at least one unsolved murder. I remember sitting in the break room, Marcy, another driver, looking pale as she whispered, I gave him rides home. To my house, he met my kids. Nobody knew what to say. Shane took a plea deal the following year, life in prison without parole. Officially, he went down for the attempted break-in and one confirmed assault. But everyone knew the cops were still digging. They were sure there was more. I quit. Eddie's a few months later. I couldn't stand the whispers, the reporters calling the store, the customers making jokes about killer pizza boys. Even now, more than 10 years later, I think about Shane. Sometimes I think about the nights we sat outside smoking, talking like friends. I think about the way his expression changed when a woman told him no. I think about how easily he blended in, how normal he seemed until the mask slipped, and I think about how close I came, how anyone could come, to trusting the wrong person. You never really know who you're working beside when you clock in for the night. Story 7. I never thought a job like food delivery could actually scare me. Not in the cheap horror movie way, but in the kind of way that makes your stomach knot and your brain whisper, something's wrong, before you even understand why. Back in the fall of 2020, I was 24 years old and living in a small upstate New York town called Fairview, about an hour west of Syracuse. Fairview wasn't much, just a scattering of neighborhoods, a few chain stores near the highway exit, and the kind of local gossip that spreads faster than wildfire. The kind of town where you run into your old high school math teacher in line at the gas station, or where the clerk at the pharmacy knows exactly which prescriptions you're picking up before you even give your name. I'd tried college straight out of high school, 2 semesters at SUNY Oswego, but it didn't stick. I wasn't failing exactly, but I couldn't shake the feeling I was wasting both money and time. Tuition was brutal, and the classes felt like a blur of busy work. By sophomore year, I was burnt out and broke, so I dropped out and moved back home. My parents weren't thrilled. My mom worked as a nurse at the local hospital, and my dad was a machinist at a metal shop outside town. Both had worked their asses off so I could do better, and instead I was back in my old bedroom, scrolling through job listings at 3 in the morning. That's when I stumbled into food delivery. It started small, just driving for DoorDash a couple nights a week, then adding Uber Eats into the mix. The flexibility was perfect for someone like me who hated routine. If I wanted to grind 10 hours on a Friday, I could. If I wanted to do nothing but sit around watching Netflix the next day, no one cared. By the summer of 2020, I was pulling in enough to pay rent on a small apartment downtown. It wasn't glamorous. 1 bedroom, slanted floorboards, a drafty window that howled in the winter, but it was mine. Fairview didn't have a huge food scene, mostly mom-and-pop diners, a handful of pizza joints, and a couple of fast food chains. The spot I picked up the most from was Angelo's Pizza and Subs, a family-run place wedged between a laundromat and a liquor store. Angelo himself was in his 60s, bald, heavy-set, and always calling everyone buddy. His daughter Carla worked the register and practically ran the place. She was maybe 22, sharp-tongued but fair, and could juggle 5 phone orders while yelling back at the kitchen without missing a beat. I became a regular face there. Some nights I'd sit in the corner sipping a Coke, waiting for orders while Angelo cracked jokes about my ancient Honda Civic and asked if I was ever going back to school. Most deliveries were harmless. Sometimes you got drunks, sometimes rude customers, but mostly people just wanted their food and tipped decently, until one night in late October. It was Saturday, October 24th, 2020, and I'd already been on the road for nearly 8 hours. Football season meant heavy orders: wings, pies, soda, the works. My Civic smelled like grease and marinara, and the passenger seat was littered with crumpled receipts. By 1:45 a.m., I was dead tired, ready to clock out. Angelo's technically closed at 2 p.m., but last-minute orders always slid in. Sure enough, the printer behind Carla whirred and spat out a ticket. She tore it free, glanced at it, then looked up at me. "Think you can handle one more?" she asked. I groaned but nodded. "Yeah, sure. Where's it going?" She scanned the slip. 72 Willow Creek Road. Cash on delivery, $40 even. 2 large pepperoni, garlic knots, and a 2-liter. Willow Creek Road. The name alone made me frown. It was one of those long, winding country roads on the outskirts of Fairview, with barely any streetlights and houses spaced far apart. Delivering out there at night always gave me the creeps. Not because I believed in ghosts or anything, but because it was isolated. If something went wrong, no one would hear you scream. Still, I shrugged. "Yeah, I got it." Carla handed me the warming bag. "Be careful. People out there are weird." The roads were empty as I headed north. My headlights carved thin tunnels through the dark. The radio was low, some late-night talk show host rambling about politics. But my mind was already foggy with exhaustion. By the time I turned onto Willow Creek, I felt that familiar unease. The pavement narrowed, tree branches overhanging like skeletal arms. My GPS said the house was near the very end. After about half a mile, I spotted it, a squat single-story ranch with faded blue siding and a sagging front porch. No porch light, no cars in the driveway, just one dim glow in a back window. I pulled over, engine idling, and sat there for a moment. Something about it made the hair on my neck rise. Just deliver the damn pizza and go, I told myself. I grabbed the food and walked up the cracked driveway. The night air smelled damp, earthy. Crickets chirped somewhere far off. At the front door, I rang the bell. For a few seconds, nothing. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, heavy. The door creaked open a few inches, and a man filled the frame. He was tall, easily 6'2", with broad shoulders. His hair was gray and messy, his beard patchy. He wore an old plaid shirt with sleeves rolled halfway up, but it was his eyes that froze me. Small, deep-set, and unblinking, like he was studying me. Yeah? His voice was gravelly, low. 2 large pepperoni, garlic knots, 2 liter. That'll be 40. I held up the bag, forcing a polite smile. He didn't move, just stared for a beat too long. Then finally said, "You can step inside while I get the money." Something in me screamed, "No." "I'm good out here," I said lightly. "Car's still running." "You sure?" "It's cold." "I'm fine." He lingered in the doorway another moment, then stepped back into the house. I could see piles of clutter inside. Newspapers, clothes, what looked like a broken chair. The air that drifted out smelled stale, sour. I heard drawers opening, coins clinking. When he came back, he held out 2 20s. Exact change. No tip. His eyes stayed locked on mine. "Wouldn't hurt to step in for a minute," he muttered. "I really should get going," I said quickly. I handed him the bag. He took it without thanks, and I turned for the driveway. Halfway to my car, I heard footsteps again. I spun. He was following me. 20 feet back, hands at his sides, face expressionless. My pulse spiked. I quickened my pace, fumbling for my keys. By the time I slid into the driver's seat, he was at the passenger door, pulling at the handle. The lock held. I jammed the car into drive and peeled out, gravel spitting under my tires. In the rearview mirror, he stood in the dark, watching me go. When I got back to Angelo's, I must have looked pale as hell. Carla frowned. "What happened?" I told her. Not dramatized, just facts. The weird insistence I come inside, the no-tip exact change, the way he followed me to my car and tried the doors. Her smirk vanished. Angelo overheard, scowled, and pulled out his phone. He called his cousin Dominic, a deputy with the sheriff's office. "Stay put," Dominic told me when Angelo handed me the phone. "We'll check it out." I sat in the shop another half hour, sipping flat Coke, hands still trembling. Eventually, a patrol car rolled up. Dominic came inside, notepad in hand, and asked for my statement. "We'll swing by, knock on the door," he said. "If he's got priors, we'll know." I nodded, though it didn't comfort me much. I never found out what the deputy saw that night. No one told me if the guy had a record or if anything came of it. But a week later, another driver, someone new, got an order for the same address. It was canceled last minute before he even left the shop. After that, Angelo quietly marked Willow Creek Road as off-limits on the delivery map. No one went there after dark. Life moved on. I kept delivering for a few more months, but every time I walked up to a dark house, I felt the same crawl under my skin, that same dread. I quit delivery work the next spring, picked up a steady warehouse job, safer maybe, but every now and then, when I drive past Willow Creek Road, I find myself glancing down it, half expecting to see him, standing in the dark, waiting. Story 8, I was 19 the winter it happened, but the memory still feels fresh, like it's waiting in the corner of my mind to step out again. Back then, I was living with my parents in a 2-story house on the edge of Willow Creek, Montana, a small working-class town tucked between pine forests and long stretches of highway. The house itself wasn't special. Beige siding that was faded in the sun, a driveway that cracked every spring with the frost, and a backyard that sloped down into a line of woods. But it was home. The kind of place where you could close your eyes and map every creak of the floorboards and every hiss of the old heater. Our street, Willow Creek Lane, only had about 10 houses. Everyone knew each other by name, recognized each other's cars, and waved to the mail carrier like family. But that winter, the safety of it all had started to feel thinner. My dad had taken a second shift at the steel plant after a coworker got hurt, and my mom was clocking late nights at the diner on Main Street. My older brother Alex had already moved out, college in Washington, and that left me alone in the house most nights. I told myself I didn't mind. I'd always been the kind of kid who filled the silence with noise. TV humming, music playing, phone calls stretching late until I drifted asleep. Still, there's a difference between being used to the quiet and being left with too much of it. That Friday in December, snow had been falling in fits all day. By evening, it had turned into a slushy mix that slicked the roads and coated the lawns in uneven gray patches. My best friend Ryan Calloway came over around 6. Ryan had lived 2 streets away since we were 6 years old. He was the kind of friend who walked in without knocking, made himself at home, and always found something to roast me about. We spent the first hour in the den, playing some old shooting game on my Xbox and talking about the road trip we wanted to take next summer. By 8, my stomach was growling. "You eaten yet?" Ryan asked, already smirking like he knew the answer. "Half a bag of Doritos," I admitted. He rolled his eyes. "That's tragic, dude. We're ordering something." I didn't argue. Ryan pulled out his phone, scrolled through, and landed on Rocky's Pizza Shack, a local place we'd been ordering from since middle school. Their delivery guys always wore the same red jackets, and everyone in town swore by their pepperoni. "Large pepperoni, extra cheese," Ryan said. "Always." He placed the order, and the app told us it'd be there in 20 to 25 minutes. We threw on an old action movie and let the TV wash the room in flickering light. Outside, the snow had turned into freezing drizzle, making the streetlights glow against the wet pavement. At 8:25, a pair of headlights swept across the living room wall. "That's him," I said, grabbing a 20 from my wallet. I opened the door. A delivery driver stood there, mid-20s, tall, red Rocky's jacket zipped to his chin. His cap was damp from the drizzle, hair curling out underneath. He balanced a steaming box in one hand and held out the other. "That'll be $18.10. I gave him the 20. "Keep the change." He smiled faintly but didn't leave right away. His eyes kept flicking toward the side of the house, toward the narrow strip of bushes that ran up against the siding. Finally, he leaned forward, voice lowered. "Not trying to freak you out, man, but I think somebody's hiding in your shrubs." My grip on the box tightened. "What?" When I pulled up, my headlights hit the side yard. I saw movement, looked like somebody ducked down. Could have been an animal, but it was big, human big. Ryan came up behind me. "You serious?" The driver nodded once. "Pretty sure. Just thought you should know. Have a good night." He jogged back to his car, tires crunching as he pulled away, taillights vanishing down the slick street. I shut the door slowly, my mind buzzing. Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Well, that's creepy." "Yeah," I said, setting the pizza on the table. "You think he was messing with us? Why would he? He doesn't know us." We went upstairs to the guest room, the only window facing that side of the house. I lifted the blinds. All I could see were dark, wet shapes of the bushes swaying slightly. Nothing else. "No one," Ryan said, though his voice wasn't convinced. "Unless they're crouched right under the window," I muttered. Ryan smirked nervously. "Want to check outside?" I hesitated. "Yeah." We slipped on our sneakers, grabbed our phones, and stepped out into the freezing drizzle. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet, except for the drip of water from gutters. Our flashlights cut across the slick ground as we moved toward the bushes. The shrubs were tall, thick, more than enough to hide behind. I stayed back, scanning with my light. Wet leaves reflected back. No movement, no sound. "See?" Ryan said. "Nothing. Maybe." I still couldn't shake the unease. "Let's check the back door." We circled around. The sliding glass door was unlocked. My stomach sank. I locked it, tested the handle twice, and we went back inside. We tried to shake it off. Pizza, movie, laughter filling the room. 20 minutes passed without incident. Then out of the corner of my eye, A shadow flickered across the living room window. "Did you see that?" I whispered. Ryan's face went pale. "Yeah, someone just walked by." We rushed to the window. The yard looked empty, but whoever it was had disappeared around the corner. "This isn't funny anymore," Ryan muttered. Before I could respond, the faint rattle of the sliding glass door handle reached us. The lock held, but someone was trying. My pulse pounded. We crept into the kitchen, peeking out at the patio. At first it looked empty. Then I flipped on the patio light. For a split second I saw him. A man in a dark hooded jacket, face shadowed, frozen mid-step. His head jerked toward us. Then he bolted, sprinting across the yard and vaulting the fence into the woods. "Call the cops," I hissed. Ryan fumbled for his phone. By the time the police arrived, the man was gone. They searched the yard, the street, even knocked on neighbors' doors. Nothing. They told us to keep everything locked and to call again if we saw anything. When my parents came home, we told them everything. None of us slept much that night. Every creak in the house made me jump. To this day, I don't know who that man was or what he wanted, but every time I order food now, I check the bushes before I open the door.